Hello everyone, welcome to a deep dive into the very first dev diary for Jurassic World Evolution 2. I wasn't around for all of the marketing hype surrounding the lead up to the release of the first game in 2018. I was born last year after all, so I had no idea what to expect from this, and I was a little miffed that we didn't get a species field guide. Actually, I still am. I'm a little bit autistic, Frontier, so I'd appreciate some sort of consistency here, thank you very much. But I am pleasantly surprised by this dev diary. Lots of exciting things for Jurassic World Evolution 2 to talk about. Our first footage of actual gameplay, new dinosaurs, new behaviors, park management, building customization, dinosaur customization, and exhibit decoration. So much to get into, so let's do that. Let's just go through the video, starting with a brief shot of an Amargasaurus, which displays both a new skin and a new behavior, a sort of threatening or territorial display. As for the skin, it has like a petrol blue stripe along its flank and back, which is new. It's a new color that we're seeing. Of course, we already knew that we can change the color of the markings, but unlike the other stripes we've seen before, this blue stripe is not lined with a different color. So that is something that we can either adjust or it's a separate pattern altogether. And that latter I'm really not hoping for, because at the end of the day, they're both stripes. I think it's something we can adjust. Next new bit of information is the confirmation of sandstorms. Adam Woods talked about how we have new locations in the game and how every location has its own challenges, and he mentions snowstorms and sandstorms as an example. And we get shots of Stegosaurus in a small park being absolutely sand blasted in a storm. Now, let's pause on this desert park though, because what we have right smack up front in front of our eyeballs is an aviary which is very different from the one we've seen in images before. We've seen the blue-toned glass dome in previous screenshots, but this one resembles the one in the current game much more. There seems to be no reflection at all on this, so it probably has a metal mesh, the same as the current aviary as opposed to glass. So aside from being able to expand our aviaries, we also have different options for how it looks. In this exhibit, we also see from very far away the Corythosaurus, which we'll get a much better look at later. We get another look at the more modernized aviary shortly after, which really highlights the contrast between the two. In this shot, we also have the return of the monorail, and in addition we see two Stegosaurus with subtle skin differences, and here you can really see how you can use the new skin system to create slight changes within a herd to make each dinosaur feel more individualistic without looking like you popped open a bag of Skittles. Or you can make pretend that it's sexual dimorphism. We do see a Triceratops and Stegosaurus sharing an exhibit, even though we've been informed they don't get along. And we see them fighting later on in this dev diary. But it is apparently possible to keep them enclosed together as long as their territories don't overlap. In this shot, we also get a new dinosaur reveal. Right by the Brachiosaurus, we have the Diplodocus. I think I'm not the only one happy to see Dippy return here. It's not exactly a surprise, not in the least, but I love Diplodocus, so it's good to have her confirmed. Here's a look at the aviary from the inside with its viewing gallery, and we see the Pteranodons landing on the roof of those. I'm not like the biggest fan of the Jurassic World Pteranodon, but I do like the skin we are seeing here. One of the most exciting things we are shown in this dev diary is the fighting between herbivores and our first glimpse at pack hunting. The fight between the two trikes feels pretty brutal, even though they aren't really using their horns, they're more like side headbutting each other. And the same goes for the fight between the stego and the trike. It just feels brutal. And seeing this type of aggression from herbivores really reminds you that they are still dangerous, even though they're not, meat-eatosauruses. And it gives them more life, as well as giving you, as park manager, more things to consider while building your enclosure, and thus adds a layer of difficulty that was missing from the first game. As for the hunting, I was very surprised, pleasantly surprised, but very surprised to see the raptors make an appearance. I think it's going to be absolutely awesome to see how a pack hunt unfolds. For the moment, we just see them chasing this poor Stegosaurus and taking out goats. That animation is pretty similar to what we already know, but there is a difference to the end of it, the way it kind of flings the goat a little bit further after pouncing on it. The raptors themselves do look like the Jurassic World raptors, not the Jurassic Park ones, similar to what we saw with the Stegosaurus. The only disappointing thing about this dev diary is how they showed off the new skin system. First, we don't actually get a look at the UI for it yet, which is a shame, but mostly the skins that they are showcasing on the Raptors are very reminiscent of those skins we got for the Raptors in the original Jurassic World Evolution, you know, those skins right at the start, which were widely panned. They were not good. I mean, who still uses those skins? I bet people who have all of the DLCs never looked back at those skins. I will say, some people just really like duller skins, so the showcase could very well be tailored to suit that crowd, that preference. And they also mentioned that they made skins to sort of match the environment, so maybe these are just the skin colors that they chose to show off in the taiga environment. We obviously aren't seeing the full scope of the options yet. And on top of that, the raptor skins shown are the exact same pattern, so we also don't know what the other patterns will look like and how that's going to affect like the color ratios. What we discovered thanks to the German article, which I covered last Monday, is that our science staff has needs. I really like that we get a little more in-depth when it comes to staff management, as long as they don't complain quite as much as the ones in Planet Zoo do. Instead of scientists just magically appearing in your park like the guests as they do currently, we have to hire them. And we see that different scientists have different traits, meaning different benefits for us as park managers, and we get to decide who we want to hire, whose traits we value in our employees. On top of that, they also have different skill levels, which we can up by providing them with training in the staff building. They even have a little bio to create some sort of connection with them. This is totally dark, but I look forward to a dinosaur escaping and attacking a scientist, and you're just sitting there like, no, not Tyson! The fool works for half the salary, and I just trained him up to level 3! Our scientists do get stressed from being assigned tasks, so you need to balance that out by giving them the opportunity to rest. Here's the thing I don't like, and it's super nitpicky and it's kind of personal, but I don't like that burnout in your scientists leads to an increased chance at sabotage. I get that sabotage sounds cool, and I get that it sort of reflects the situation with Nedry, but it would be much more realistic if a burnt out scientist is more prone to human error due to a lack of focus, as opposed to them becoming a villain. So, for example, the dinosaur incubation that the burnt out scientist worked on might fail because the scientist in question didn't have their head in the game. As someone who's currently dealing with burnout and depression, let me stand up for these poor overworked scientists and say, burnout doesn't make you villainous. It doesn't make you want to sabotage the company you work for. In fact, the people who care the most about their job and about the company they work for are exactly the people more prone to burnout, because they invest so much of themselves and push themselves so much further than they should. Side tangent done. Anyway, in the example they showed, the sabotage is actually a guest protest. It doesn't really have to do with the scientists, so there are more forms of sabotage that can happen in your park. And in the bottom right, we see that this toggle has gone red, so this has something to do with the level of danger in the park. Now, if I may briefly direct your attention to the left with all of the icons for the different tabs, we've discussed these last Monday, but they were very pixelated and I couldn't make out what the second one from the bottom was, and so many people said, oh, it's definitely the Mosasaurus. It is 100% the Mosasaurus. It is a tool for making Mosasaurus tanks. And some of those many people called me dumb, called me out for overlooking the details and not paying attention, yada yada yada. I present to you A transport helicopter carrying a crate with a location cross. Not a mosasaurus. I'm sorry, I feel vindicated, okay? A lot of people in the comments did speculate that it looks like a helicopter, and they were right. This is just a function to transport your dinosaurs. But speaking of the mosasaurus and getting back to that, look at this water back here. That 100% looks like a tank to me. It looks like a concrete tank. We see the concrete on the interior, but also a bit on the outside where the terrain isn't level with the fencing around the tank. And it's lined with fences probably to ensure that whatever is in there doesn't jump out, because we've seen that they can do that, or for stupid guests to jump in. From this single shot, there's no way of telling if it works like the other exhibits, where you place tank walls the same way you place fencing, or if it works like the aviary, being a standard shape that you can expand upon. But theoretically, it could work like this. You select a tank wall the same way you can select a fence type, and you can place it the same way you would a regular fence, you know, make any shape you want, and as soon as the two ends meet and they form a complete enclosure, the game recognizes it as a tank, so it creates depth and fills it with water. That is going to be my most optimistic prediction until we see anything further. This little bit over here could potentially be how divers get into the tank. That seems like a bad idea, I agree, but you know what else is a bad idea? Driving into a raptor paddock in an open jeep. But they do that too, so I'm not ruling anything out. Last thing I wanted to point out from this shot are the hotels in the background. Those look to have different sizes, which would be very nice. They did say that guest buildings would be available in small, medium, and large, so possibly that includes the hotels. Here we have a very green Corythosaurus. It's a pretty bright shade, with some orange on the crest that I'm assuming we can all customize. I am a big fan of the plates on this Stegosaurus. They're not bright, and I do like bright colors, but I love this color combination and the contrast between them, and I think it would look especially cool with a warm-toned brown body color. I cannot wait to play around with this skin system. As for the brachy in the back, this looks to be a different pattern from what we've seen before. It has these bigger patches that are in a different color. It's pretty disappointing as far as patterns go, but maybe if you pick more contrasting colors, you can salvage it. So far, we haven't really seen any standout patterns yet. Colors, yes, but patterns, no. So that is something I am waiting for. Next dinosaur reveal is the Torosaurus, and believe it or not, that is not the most exciting thing in this little moment in the Dev Diary. First, that water looks amazing. Look at that light refraction going on. Much, much better than the first game. But for me, the most exciting thing is this. That cactus is inside the rock. Those two items are overlapping, so I feel fairly confident in concluding that this means there are no hitboxes on the scenery items for our exhibits. And that opens up a realm of possibilities. Pause the video for hype. And now let's continue. The last thing in this shot is the new fence in the background. It's light on top, darker on the bottom. It's much thinner than the ones we've seen before. I don't really have anything else to say about it. It's a nice fence. I just wanted to point it out. A fraction of a second later, we get to see the UI for exhibit design. We have nature, water, terrain paints, rocks, carnivore feeders, and terrain manipulation. We also see that the radius can be changed in smaller increments. In the first game, we only had 3 settings, which is boggling the mind to think back to. Now, this does mean that, as far as we know currently, foliage within an exhibit is not individually placeable. It still works with a brush. If it really is limited to that, that would be a little bit of a disappointment, because I think for the perfect exhibit design, you do want to have the option to just place, you know, one specific cactus in one specific place. There's still like slight hope that some foliage is also going to be under like the decorations tab. But so far, it looks like foliage is only placeable via brushes. Although, saying that, I can hardly imagine that that's actually going to be the case. I mean, it's not much, but we have 5 individually placeable trees in the current game. I don't want to imagine that they're taking a step back from that. So I am hoping that hidden away in some other place are still the individually placeable foliage items. In this shot, I really just have one thing to point out: yet another dinosaur, the Chasmosaurus. This overview of the different types of guests in our park is really interesting. What I wonder is, do certain locations just naturally attract more, let's say, adventure-oriented guests, and you have to build your park to meet their wishes? Or do you build whatever park you want, and based on what you do, does that then attract a certain ratio of adventure versus nature lovers? You know, it's kind of like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Do guests determine how you build your park? Or does your park determine what kind of guests you attract? I am still hoping that we can click on individual guests and get like a random generated name and their preferences and stuff like that, just to give the guests more individual personality. We have a T-Rex! Again, another surprising reveal. I mean, we knew it was in the game, I just wasn't expecting to see it today. It has a fairly decent skin. I don't know what that sound was. It has a fairly decent skin with a little bit of blue on the back. I'm not like blown away by this particular skin, but I am very excited for the possibilities that are hinted at. A quick look at the building customization also has me antsy to get my hands on this game. There is so much variety, so much to play around with. It's so good. The one thing that had my jaw dropping was this. Not the Pachycephalosaurus, although, hello there. No, what we can do to the rock. We can turn this Dwayne Johnson any way we like, which means you get so much more use out of one rock. And finally, hello Dracorex. God, there are so many dinosaur reveals in just this single dev diary. Honestly, this was great, and it definitely makes up for the lack of a species field guide this week, even though it did kind of pull the rug out from under me. With every bit they reveal, I get more and more excited about this game. Let me know in a comment what you thought of this first dev diary, and leave a like on the video if you enjoyed this breakdown. If some of the things I skipped was new information to you, then I recommend staying up to date with my weekly news update videos, which come out every Saturday and round up all of the information of the past week. I've done that every week since the announcement of the game, so all the information is in there. But to make this video a little bit shorter, I had to skip over the well-known stuff at this point. Thank you so much for watching, liking, subscribing, and until next time, enjoy the anticipation. Hello everyone! Oh, no, you can hear the air conditioning. You can hear the air conditioning. Stop! It's getting hot in here, so... Actually, no.